of all, do you have any focus on something for Korean American community?
Well, the purpose of the meeting today is I just returned from a really powerful trip to Korea, South Korea, and Vietnam. And I want to share with both our Korean American and Vietnamese American community what I learned on the trip. The time in Korea was spent pretty heavily focusing upon the nuclear negotiations with North Korea. We were up at the DMZ, we were in Seoul. We did a little bit of discussion about some other issues facing Korea, especially issues in the Korean-Japanese relationship. But it was my second trip to Korea, but I hadn't been for almost 20 years. My first trip was in 2000, so it had been a long time ago. And I really enjoyed the chance to go back, and it was very important, especially with the nuclear discussions ongoing, to make sure I not only understood the American perspective on those negotiations, but the Korean perspective was really important.
On nuclear negotiations, what do you think the better way to break a deadlock right now? The all or nothing, or step by step?
Well, it has to be step by step. And I think if either side wants all or nothing, then we will not break the deadlock. So if the U.S. says you have to do everything at once, that won't happen. And if North Korea says you have to lift all of the sanctions at once, that's not going to happen either. So I think the step-by-step approach is the best. And I think the most important, first there's a question, it's really a test of whether North Korea will ever be serious about denuclearization. And the most important step that will help us determine if they're serious is if and when they decide to disclose what their nuclear arsenal and resources are. Until they do that, we have no way of knowing whether they're serious or not. And they have not done that. So the president's had 2 summits with Kim Jong-un, but in neither of the summits has he agreed to that kind of disclosure. That's really the first step that will tell whether they're serious about it or not.
How about the sanctions against North Korea? Do you think that we should ease the sanction exchange for the North Korean action?
If there were significant action like a disclosure of and the allowance of international inspections, then yes, I think you could. I don't think you'd eliminate all the sanctions, but I think you could ease them. But I think the move on the North Korean side has to be a significant one. Thus far, it's been talk, and I applaud the president. I'm glad that he's meeting with Kim Jong-un, but there has been no progress so far. So I think we ought to look for the way we can work together to get them to disclose their arsenal. And if they do that, then it would be appropriate to lift some of the sanctions.
On immigration, President Trump is sending immigrants to sanctuary city right now, and he considers as resuming the family separation. Do you, Democratic Party, has a plan to stop that, or the alternative solution?
Well, we've had a comprehensive immigration reform plan on the table since 2013 that the Republicans have refused to accept. Now in the Senate, there are Republicans who accepted that plan, and it was a plan that included reforms to the legal immigration system, a path to citizenship for dreamers and those who are here without documents, but also significant investments in border security and visa reforms. We had a complete package, but President Trump and the Republican majority has been unwilling to embrace it. We've come to the table a couple of times and even modified what we've proposed, but the Republicans have been unwilling to do it. And what I'm hearing, even over the weekend, I was traveling in Southwest Virginia, is that the administration is not just making it hard for families coming to the border, they're slowing down the approval of student visas to have foreign students come and study in the United States. They're slowing down a common form of visa that lets foreign students who are here in PhD programs stay and work after they get a PhD. There's a concerted effort by this administration to restrict every form of immigration, legal immigration, students, tourists, making it harder for people to process if they want to move from a legal permanent resident to citizenship status. They're making it harder to do. So for the administration, this is not about illegal immigration. It's about immigration, period. And the Democrats have a very different view. We think immigration is a key to our nation's strength and important for our workforce.
Do you support merit-based system?
Yes. In fact, we have proposed alternatives. For example, you could take the current There's a component of the visa program that's kind of a specialty nation visa that we put in place to make sure that there was diversity in the nations where people were coming from, and we've expressed willingness to look at that and frankly make it merit-based. And one of the reasons we're open to it is the people coming from those nations already have high skills and they would meet any merit-based criteria. But what we see is when we put proposals like that on the table, the White House rejects them because thus far they're being driven by people like Steve Miller and others who just want to close off every form of immigration, legal or otherwise, including students and tourists. That's hurting the American economy right now.
But the President, last question. But the President Trump says he intends to end chain immigration. I mean the family-based immigration.
Well, even the president's words are disrespectful. There's no such thing in the code as chain migration. It's family unification. That's been a pillar of our nation's immigration laws essentially since they started, that if somebody is here, we would give a priority because we should be pro-family. We would give a priority to their family members. And so the president's own wife benefited. Her family benefited from the family unification principles of the immigration system. So anybody who wants to end that, I think, is proposing a bad strategy, and anybody who comes up with a name, chain migration, to try to denigrate those who are here for that reason, I think just the language that they use shows you their hostility toward new Americans.
Yeah, any message to Korean community?
Our Korean American community in Virginia is a very strong one, as evidenced by some wonderful elected officials who are part of this community, and I look forward to the dialogue today.
Okay,
Thank you.